You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders podcast, back with another Monday Matters episode with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke. Dr. Schwanke, I don't think I've ever just said that. Dr.
I
Schwanke.
know. That actually stuck out to me, too.
Yeah, I was like, wow, Dr. Schwanke's in the room. I'm trying to wrap up some conversations that you and I have been having over my new book, Whose Permission Are We Waiting For? Because when your new book comes out, I would love to do the same thing as we walk through some of the content from your new book. And so before we talk about this week's topic, which I want to talk about, your greatest joy may not be what you think, as a way to just help listeners think as they step into this week. Remind listeners about your new book and where they can find it.
Yep, absolutely. My new book is called Trusted: Trust Pillars, Trust Killers, and the Secret to Successful Schools. And they can find it on the ASCD website. ASCD is my publisher. And we also have it on Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. So they can find it there. And if I'm not sure of the exact date that it will be released, but pre-orders are open now. So you can jump in and get a copy.
Well, if you had the opportunity this summer to go to ASCD, ISD, you got to see Jen in so many different options and settings that I think that, I don't know, Jen, have you become the official MC for the...
No, not at all. But I have been doing some really fun work with ISD and ASCD. We're going to launch a cohort. We're calling it a council for instructional leaders, because we believe that's kind of an area where a lot of people are doing instructional leadership. And I'm not talking the principalship. I'm talking central office positions, chief academic officers, that type of thing. So it's been really fun. We're trying to launch this council and get people together to talk about instruction. So that's a lot of what I've been doing with them, but also kind of promoting my own work, which is, strictly in the principal space. So lots of fun.
Well, it goes without saying that I'm just so extremely proud of the great work that you've been doing in serving leaders and schools. And it's been so fun to watch that work grow over the years. And, sometimes I have friends reach out to me too, who are that have those same questions of how do I keep moving in the direction of what I love,
Right.
as we're transitioning, because I've been doing the show long enough that a lot of the leaders that are listening may be new and aspiring, but others have been doing this work a while. And so they're also transitioning. It's so interesting, Jen, how this summer, how many of my friends that I've worked with through my consulting work have already been promoted from assistant to principal, or principal to executive director, or assistant soup to superintendent. And so even though we call this Principal Matters, the School Leaders podcast, a lot of our listeners and colleagues that connect with our content are supporting leaders or supporting schools in roles that may have look a lot different 5 years later than they did 5 years ago. So the question that I wanted to just sit on today with is, even as we are so committed to the outcomes we want, the supports we want, the work that we're doing, how do we avoid the trap of thinking that our greatest joy is in what we do? And so, because that can, and so I just want to talk personally. I think sometimes the wrestling match that all of us have, but I'll just speak about Will, is we're given this vocation, this calling, this mission to work with students in schools to make a difference in the lives of others. We also have the dynamics that come with just living, which is, I want to support my family. I want to make sure that I have advancement in my career. I want to make sure I'm provided the value of what I think I'm giving. And so with all that growth comes opportunity, but also with new titles, new responsibilities comes this dilemma, Jen, where we begin to start wrapping our identity around our titles or our job descriptions, or I'll just speak to myself, my next book, my next speaking opportunity, whatever that is. And so listeners, you can fill in the blanks for you. But I think sometimes it's important for us, and this is why I devoted a chapter to this in my new book, for us to just really think deeply about where are you finding your greatest joy? Because I think that there can be a trap involved sometimes when we let our identities become where we find our joy.
How long do we have? Can we talk for 14 hours? Because
Mhm.
I think this is a critical conversation and I think we have to have it. First of all, sorry, listeners, look at me diving right into the deep end. First of all, I think it's very easy to let your work define you, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think
Right.
the work life balance conversation gives me a little heebie-jeebies because I think the accurate conversation is work life integration.
Mhm.
You can't untangle the two. What you do, what you spend 8, 9, 10, 12 hours doing a day, you can't just snap the lid shut and not be that. So when I think about it, I think about work life integration. I see a lot of educators assuming that the next step is going to be the one that makes them happy. And
Mhm.
it's going to be, oh, I just want to be an AP. I just want to be a principal. I just want to get to central office. It reminds me of a friend of mine who said he was a fourth grade teacher and then he kind of moved into assistant principal role. And he said, all I wanted was to get into HR. That's what I wanted. And he did. And then he said in a whisper, he says, it turns out I hate interviewing. And so there's a lot to unpack there. Are you seeking a joy that actually will kill your soul?
Mhm.
So you have to be careful about that. And this also makes me think about I'm on several social media forums with principals, and many of them talk about, hey, this isn't working for me. This is too much. It's hurting my family. I'm realizing my per diem is lousy compared to when I was teaching. And then they step back out of it and they say, is that okay? It's almost like they're asking permission,
Yeah.
and I'm tying this to the conversation in your book. Whose permission are you waiting for your own self-actualization? And we talked in an earlier episode, Will, about how we look around at other people and we play the comparison game and we're never really happy with where we are because we're not doing what we assume we should be doing. So really this is about that conversation with the guy in the mirror, that giving yourself permission to find the joy that works for you. And no, Will and Jen certainly can't sit behind our microphones in Oklahoma and Ohio and tell you what career path to take. But we can say, whose permission are you waiting for? And we can say, be careful you don't find yourself doing something you actually don't want to do.
Mhm.
And be careful that you're not um, enjoying the position you're in to its fullest. Just one more quick note. I recently took a trip. We talked about it on an earlier episode to Alaska, and we were on a cruise ship. And the cruise director was talking about, he gave a little session on his job, and everybody's like, well, what's next for you? And he said, I get asked that all the time. And he said, this is my next.
Oh.
This is what I want.
Mm.
Why would I want to move up to manager or, get up where the captains are? He said, look at my job, you guys. I'm booking gigs. I'm doing some solos. I'm walking around a cruise ship talking to people. This is my next. And it struck me how wise it is to say, no, I'm good. I have a friend who's been a principal for 24 years, and he said, this is me. This is me.
Mhm.
I'm not going anywhere. This is where I find my joy.
Yeah. So let's speak to some practical thoughts on this, Jen. One is um, no place is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But
Truth.
if you are in a place, and you and I've talked about this in other settings, so I just want to say it out loud. If you're in a place that's toxic or smothering or hostile or whatever, you deserve to look somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
No one needs to stay in a place where where it's harming them. But then two, if you're in a place where right now the fit means that you're being able to influence others, help others, support others, then how do you flourish where you're planted?
Right.
Because here's the this isn't a dilemma, it's just the reality. All of us, I think, because of how our minds, especially leaders, we're very task oriented and we're very um, goal oriented, and I love the adventure of the next thing. But if we're not careful, we can sacrifice the joy of the moment for the dream of the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people with whom I work that are highly effective at their jobs or at their outcomes usually get promoted because they're so centered and flourishing where they're planted. And so if you're like anxious or yearning to do something different, it doesn't mean don't work on those pathways. And I talk about that in other chapters of the book. But what it does mean is flourish where you are, so that you can continue to be the kind of person you want to be, make the kind of difference you want to make, and find so much joy where you are. Because the best case scenario would be if something does come up that you have an opportunity to do something new, that you're able to leave something you absolutely love to do something else that maybe you'll love more. And I
Hmm.
know that sounds so ideal, Jen, but I just want to say it out loud because I think sometimes we sacrifice the joy of the present for the possibility of what we think is going to be next.
Right. I heard a great thing a couple of weeks ago. It was in reference to a retirement trajectory, but I think it applies here. And you have to ask yourself, am I in a mode of go slow, or no go? Um, and it could, the answer is so personalized. Am I going to move forward into something else? Am I going to slow down and just see what the right fit is? Go slow. Or am I no go? And I'm going to stay right here and master what it is I'm doing. So
Yeah.
that can be a question you ask yourself. Go slow, or no go. It might help.
Well, and I'm going to speak to this reality too. I don't mention this in the book, but because of the time that we're recording this, we're coming off of summer conferences
Hmm.
and a lot of state conferences and the national conference that you and I both got to present at. And so I'm just going to speak to the elephant in the room. Um, for conferences for me, and I think this may be the experience for other leaders, Jen, you correct me if this isn't yours. I think professional conferences are kind of like the church camps for leaders. You
Right.
know what I mean? You
Right.
go, you're
Yes.
surrounded by other people that are just like, I'm so glad to be here. I
Right.
want to learn. And
Right.
you've got great speakers, you've got great music, you've got fun places to see, and every day gets better and better. And by the time you leave, it feels like church camp. You're like,
Right.
oh my gosh, this is the
Right.
best experience I've ever had. But there's also a part of you that when you get away from it, you're like, how can I do that every day?
Right.
Like what could I be the person that does nothing but just summer camp or conferences? And I'm just going to tell you as someone who a principal who would go to conferences and have that experience, and I would look at people on the stage or I'd look at presenters and think I would like to do that too. On the one hand, it's a good ambition if it's because you want to help and support others and share the things you're learning. It's an empty
Hmm.
expectation if you think that somehow stepping into those roles is going to give you more joy than what you're already doing.
That's
So I
right.
just want to say that out loud too, because I think sometimes there's these weird dynamics that get involved in the work that you and I do and the work that we're surrounding ourselves with. Because at the end of the day, the work that we do always comes back to, even now that I'm full time consulting, the real work that I do is sitting with leaders, grappling through hard decisions, walking through really difficult moments, helping solve things, helping examine systems, having tough conversations about culture, doing the deep work of learning
Mhm.
something that I can bring to someone else to help them grow too. So those shiny moments that we get to experience, they're fun, and I'm not suggesting we don't experience them, but we shouldn't falsely, it's almost like fool's gold. Those shiny moments, we shouldn't make the mistake of calling gold,
Right.
when the real gold is what happens when we get back to work.
Well, exactly. And for the principals listening, I think they're acutely aware that, come August or September or whenever the schools open, that's where the work is. And that's when the emails are going to start to be overwhelming. And that's when we're going to have to focus on instructional leadership and resources and assessment and discipline. And are the buses coming on time? And, oh my goodness, is it going to be breakfast at lunch with syrup packets, those kind of things that
Mhm.
really do define the work of a principal. And if those things make you miserable and the thought of them make you miserable, that's one conversation. If you're like, no, that's the stuff that's really fun, I actually don't hate syrup packets, then there's your joy right there.
Well, Jen, so many times when I'm sitting with leaders that are trying to make decisions about those transitions, I don't want to discourage you from pursuing the next thing either, but I do want you to reflect on that pursuit in light of some questions. So let me just throw some
Right.
questions out. One, um, where are you finding your deepest satisfaction? Because if you think it's going to be whatever that job is, whatever that next thing is, you will be disappointed. And I'm just saying that out loud because I know that in my own heart, my own experience, in my own personal life, and I'm a person of faith too. And I'll just tell this quick story, Jen. I remember when I was transitioning I'd been invited to leave my principalship to become an executive director for our state association. And I wrestled. I loved my school. I loved, I still had one daughter at the school. I was really wrestling with that whole transition piece. I also knew that this new opportunity gave me an opportunity to do some other things I would love. And I was kind of paralyzed with the pros and the cons. And I remember in just a moment of solitude and prayer and reflection, just praying. I don't know what to do. And so I'm just going to share what Will's experience was. I'm not suggesting this is anyone else's, but in that moment, the impression that I had from my prayer was, and I'll just say what I felt, Will, I don't care what you do, as long as you know where you're finding your deepest satisfaction.
Right.
And that was such a great moment for me to just pause and go, oh, sometimes these choices that we have in front of us, they're super important. But if I'm making the choice thinking that that's going to be the ultimate, I'm going to make the wrong choice. So some things to chew on. If your deepest satisfaction is found in your prestige, you're probably making the wrong decision. If your deepest satisfaction is found in your salary, then you're probably making the wrong decision. If your deepest satisfaction is found in your achievements and accolades, then you're probably placing your core values in the wrong things. So I hate to sound preachy, Jen, but I just want to say it out loud that those core values you brought to this whole work that you do as a teacher, as a leader, as a whatever role you find yourself in, hold on to those, because it's going to be in those values where you're going to find your deepest satisfaction, which is why I think that finding your greatest joy is not always what you think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful way to wrap up that chapter of your book. And it takes that really hard look at yourself as to what you really want.
Well, friends, if you're wrestling with any of these questions yourself, sometimes the best places for me to talk about those things is with someone else. So you can always reach out to Jen or me with those questions too, because neither one of us is claiming that we've got it all figured out. But this is an important journey that you're on, and we would love to just walk it with you. So Jen, how can listeners stay connected with you?
Yep, they can find me at jenschwanke.com.
And you can always find my resources at williamdparker.com. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.